emails and fill out rates and all of this, and then we'll start right away. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Anatole. Good morning to everyone. There is just a few points to discuss on housekeeping for filling in the questionnaire. We just want to thank you to all of those who have been reaching out to us to resolve issues regarding access to logins. We've had a record number of site managers and national focal points connect and start to input information into the questionnaire, and we're very pleased to see this. We can also very gladly report that we have a few sections ones which are now at 100%, which we are very pleased to hear. But we also have a rather large number of questionnaires that still sit at 0% completion. In this regard, we still very much encourage you to contact your the site managers within your countries and encourage them to at a bare minimum log in to the questionnaire and at least input some information so that we can register that there has been a change and that there has been access. As we all know, the upcoming deadlines, early deadlines for submissions of Section 1 is in January, and Section 2 is in March. I think beyond that, I don't think there are any urgent matters with regards to filling in the questionnaire. Please send any issues that you may have with regards to access to wh-periodicreporting at unesco.org. Back to you, Anatole.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let me start by just giving you a little bit of background to Synergies and why they're in the questionnaire and why they're important to us. So let me just share my screen. There we go. So we estimate that about % of World Heritage properties at the moment are protected under at least one multilateral agreement or program, and this is no big surprise given that we inscribe properties of outstanding universal value, as we have seen in previous weeks, and that means that there's a likelihood that they're exceptional under more than one aspect, and therefore also can benefit from inscription under several different conventions for different sets of values. And we at the World Heritage Center done our best to collect and present the relevant information in our database and therefore on our website. The World Heritage Committee has recognized Synergies as an important aspect of the work on the convention for a number of years now. There's a reflection that started around 2009, 2010 at the committee sessions, where the importance of Synergies was underlined in a number of strategic decisions on the work of the center and the implementation of the convention. The committee requested a study and an information document that was delivered in 2012 in St. Petersburg for the 36th session, and following this there have been a number of initiatives, including the availability of the relevant data on our website. And periodic reporting is of course a great opportunity for us to have a look. And all of this was then reflected into the operational guidelines, paragraphs 41 to 44, in which the guidelines indicate that the committee recognizes the benefits of closer coordination of its work with other UNESCO programs, and the operational guidelines even list all of the relevant programs. The guidelines also indicate that the committee, via its secretariat, will ensure the appropriate coordination and information sharing between the convention and other programs. And there have been a number of activities around this, which we will cover as well in very soon. And that the committee will invite the representatives of intergovernmental bodies to attend meetings as observers, which is a practice that has been in place now for a number of years. So the idea is that none of these conventions or none of these bodies are isolated silos that just exist next to each other. They are permeable, and in the field and in the reality, when you are in an area that is protected under one or several conventions, it is in fact one single area with one single set of local and national laws, etc., which does need to also accommodate for all of these instruments. So very briefly, our website incorporates overlapping protections and provides a more advanced search functionality. Let me just demonstrate this very briefly for you. And so if we take any of the list, we have under programs and conventions, so if you use the search function, the advanced search function on the World Heritage list, you will have all of the programs and conventions listed here, and you can search by program which properties are inscribed both under the World Heritage Convention and other conventions. So if we take, for instance, the 2003, let's say, convention in Asia and the Pacific, you will see that it will give you a complete list, or I hope it is complete at least. It gives you a list of all the properties that are inscribed under more than one convention, under 1972 and 2003. And if we take, say, the cultural landscape of the Bali province, you will find here on the side, on the page of the property itself, so this is the individual page of this, you will find here on the side a little box on which other instruments the property is protected under. So this in turn means that this information needs to be kept updated, and a good opportunity for us to do this and to make sure that everyone is on the same page is to ask you, as part of the periodic reporting exercise, to contribute and to update this information. The cycle 3 of periodic reporting, as you have seen, therefore asks you about all of these linkages in 2 chapters, one in section 1 at the national level and one in section 2 at the level of every property, and we'll have a closer look at this in a minute. With regard to culture conventions, very briefly, because it's the somewhat easier part of the two. UNESCO has established the Culture Conventions Liaison Group to reinforce synergy amongst the 6 culture conventions, and the work of the liaison group includes a review of the working methods of the conventions, planning for statutory meetings, and coordination of funding and resource mobilization. These are meetings that happen on a relatively regular basis. And one of the newer initiatives has been to organize meetings of the chairpersons of the intergovernmental committees and the UNESCO Culture Conventions. The first meeting was in Bonn in 2015 on the occasion of the 39th session of the committee. And there's a rather interesting, very short statement that was published by the chairs on this occasion, which I encourage you to read. It's just 2 pages, but I wanted to pick out briefly a couple of things because it ties into a number of things. It's a reaction largely as well to the evolving or not so evolving threats that the World Heritage properties and cultural properties worldwide have been facing for a number of years, and in fact, as we have seen on the session on OUV, have been facing since the very beginning of the convention. It addresses the fact that each of the conventions has contributed to the process of protecting heritage and addressing the task that is the duty of all states parties to protect, safeguard, and understand cultural and natural heritage at all times and under any circumstances, with full respect for cultural diversity and creative expression. And it highlights that these conventions are complementary and that together they constitute a robust standard-setting body to guide the cooperative action of the international community in implementing preventive and corrective measures in accordance with universally recognized and shared ethical principles and duties, and with the support of science, communication, and education. So this does set the tone as well for this cooperation, that essentially the aims of the 1972 convention and the aims of other conventions are aligned, and they're all meant to help us better protect our heritage. Another couple of points that they raised, which are very relevant to what we ask of you as part of periodic reporting, is also that the chairs underline the need for renewed political will to support the cultural conventions as a whole and to help achieve equitable and sustainable development and peace worldwide. And this aligns not just with the goals of UNESCO, but it's also as part of an entire reflection on the 2030 agenda and the role that culture and heritage can play in sustainable development. The chairs also highlighted on this occasion the urgent need to enhance the integrated interpretation and implementation of the set of UNESCO cultural conventions in the face of disturbing trends, such as the proliferation of hate crimes against cultural heritage, its intentional targeting and destruction, the pillaging and clandestine excavating of archaeological sites, the illicit trafficking of cultural objects, and so on, all of which constitute further challenges to the protection of cultural and natural heritage worldwide. And we have seen that this was already a concern in 1972, and this is clearly has been an increasing concern for in recent years as well. And so the idea of reinforcing synergies is also to help us better be more efficient and have a more coordinated approach on the ground in order to fight all of the threats, old and new, that heritage is facing. And so it calls for systematic efforts to address the emerging trends and the implementation of the conventions. Just as a quick reminder, the questionnaire will ask you about the following: the 1954 Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the Event of Armed Conflict, along with its 1999 Second Protocol, the 1970 Convention on the Means of Prohibiting and Preventing the Illicit Import, Export, and Transfer of Ownership of Cultural Property, the 2001 Convention on the Protection of Underwater Cultural Heritage, the 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage, and the 2005 Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions. And so the chairpersons of all of these conventions have continued to meet, and one of the requirements as well for us is to keep monitoring how all of these conventions are linked to one another. We also, in the questionnaire, ask you about two rather important texts, which one of which is perhaps sadly a little bit less known these days. It's the 1972 recommendation concerning the protection at the national level of the cultural and natural heritage. This recommendation was adopted at exactly the same time as the 1972 convention. And the idea was that, yes, we recognize heritage of outstanding universal value, but the principles that guide the convention, the 1972 convention, should also apply to all heritage. It's not limited to just exceptional heritage. And therefore, we should have the same approach, and we should embed the same principles at the national level and make it the responsibility of the member states of UNESCO to take on board at the national level all of these principles. And according to the recommendation, in conformity with their jurisdictional and legislative requirements, each state should formulate, develop, and apply as far as possible a policy whose principal aim should be to coordinate and make use of all scientific, technical, cultural, and other resources available to secure the effective protection, conservation, and presentation of the cultural and natural heritage. Which should sound very familiar because the language is in essence the same as that of the 1972 convention, but applied to a wider range of properties. And so we also ask states parties to the convention on this occasion to give an indication of whether or not they use this instrument. The other recommendation that the questionnaire mentions is the 2011 recommendation on the historic urban landscape, Hull recommendation, which was adopted on the 10th of November 2011 by UNESCO, the General Conference, and outlines the historic urban landscape approach, which moves beyond the preservation of the physical environment to focus on the entire human environment with all of its tangible and intangible qualities and the relationships between people and their environment and how they shaped one another over time. It seeks to increase the sustainability of planning and design interventions by taking into account all of the existing elements, tangible and intangible, environmental, the cultural diversity, and the socio-economic and environmental factors, along with local community values that link heritage with people. It's a soft law instrument in the sense that it is not binding. It is a recommendation, but it has become a very important guiding element for the implementation of the convention as well. And so we will definitely talk more about the Hull recommendation in the future, if only as well during a specific session on managing urban heritage, which is planned for a little bit later next year, I believe. Very briefly, just to take you through the questionnaire itself, because I'm taking too much time as it is. The section 1 of the questionnaire takes you through a number of questions. It's the more thorough of the two, but you will see the questions themselves are relatively straightforward. As always, our save button is coming up. So it asks you, we pre-fill question 211 according to the information that is available to us at the center. And we ask you to confirm whether your state party is party to, not party to, or in the process of adhering to the whole list of agreements. This is we start with the multilateral environmental agreements. And so we go through the list. I won't dwell too much on these because I know that my colleagues will go through them in detail. It is followed by the same set of questions for the UNESCO Culture Conventions, so not party to, or adhesion in progress. You can have a space to list any other relevant global or regional conventions that your state party is party to or in the process of adhering to. You can add or delete items to this. So if you have 15 new ones, you have enough space to do so. And if you have none, it is not a mandatory question. If there's nothing, then you don't fill anything out. Question 2.3 is a confirmation question. This is based on the data that is available to us. So in the framework of the 1954 Hague Convention, and which properties benefit from enhanced protection. And you can validate or update. And if there is anything, information will be pre-filled here. Question 2.4 asks you whether your state party intends to request the granting of enhanced protection. And just as a perhaps side note, but enhanced protection means that To put it lightly, because my quotes are a little bit heavy, but essentially the idea is that its cultural property is considered to be of greatest importance for humanity, provided that it is already protected by adequate domestic, legal, and administrative measures, with the provision that in the event of conflict, which is the aim of the 54 Convention, it not be used for military purposes or to shield military sites, which is a way of ensuring the protection of exceptional heritage. Obviously, in terms of conflict, and enhanced protection can be requested at any time for a property. You will find more information on all of this if you click on guidance as well. You have here, as always, in the key terms, the complete references for all of the terms used in the questionnaire from the list of key terms. The list of World Heritage properties which your state party intends to, which the state party may intend to request the granting of enhanced protection, can be given here. And then we finish the chapter with the UNESCO programs, so the MAB program, the Geoparks programs. Again, Kathy and Akane will provide you with more information on this. And we finish on the conventions and programs in section 1. So you get to say whether there is communication between the World Heritage focal points and the focal points of other conventions. There is one case that has come up as a question in the past, which is what if the same person is the focal point for several conventions, in which case we assume by default that yes, there is communication. But other than that, you get to provide comments as well. And we also ask information about whether focal points are involved in the revision and implementation of natural and cultural heritage strategies, policies, and action plans that go beyond World Heritage, so that tie into other aspects of heritage management. And finally, the UNESCO recommendations that we have mentioned. Section 2 goes through a slightly shorter version of the same at the property level, of course. So if you go through your navigation to chapter 2, you will have the pre-filled information based on our records regarding the protection of the property. You can amend this as needed and provide comments. The same question is asked as well at this level for the granting of enhanced protection under 1954 Hague Convention. The question is asked about the Ramsar Convention, whether the property is, or rather whether the state party intends to designate all of the property or part of the property under the Ramsar Convention, where the same questions is asked for a number of other programs. Again, the level of cooperation at property level under the different programs. You will have for each program the possibility of filling out one of the statements, and we hope, of course, that there is regular communication around all of them, and you are asked about intangible cultural heritage and the Memory of the World program as well, same thing. Here you have guidance on what the Memory of the World program is, which is about the world's documentary heritage, which is a program that is managed and under the direct authority of the Director General of UNESCO. And so you get to answer this, and then you get to not forget to use your save function, and it is done. There's much to say about Synergies, all of the convention, but in essence, for us, the most important elements are that we know which one of the conventions and programs apply to you, how they are applied, and whether there are existing synergies and communications with them, or whether this is an area that would be a good opportunity to be included in the action plans, notably. So as I've already taken way too much time anyway, I will pass on to Akane and Kathy, who will present to you cooperations and synergies with biodiversity-related conventions. Thank you very much. Let me just stop sharing my screen, and I pass the floor to Akane and Catherine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anatole, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I know it's late night for some of you, and thank you very much for joining. Anatole has already given a very good overview of synergies with other conventions and programs. Now my colleague Kathy from IUCN and myself, we'd like to present, sorry, let me share my screen first, sorry. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so now Kathy and myself, we are presenting synergies with other conventions and programs from a nature perspective. So synergy is becoming more and more important at the national, regional, and international level, as we are seeing increasing number of multi-internationally designated areas, and also in many cases, different conventions, we are working towards the same shared goal, including sustainable development goals and also global biodiversity targets. So, but synergy is a sound good term, but somehow it is also ambiguous for many of us. So through this presentation, we hope to provide or contextualize synergies and give you a clearer picture of what we are looking for through this exercise by giving further background and also actual examples. So I will first present some background of more background of these synergies with other conventions, and then Cassie will present, will introduce you and further visualize with concrete case studies. So let me, okay. So I first want to start with this.
Akane, sorry,
yes?
just quickly, it's a little bit slow, so I think it's now full screen so we can see it. Sorry.
Okay, okay, sorry. So yes, so now we are seeing the photo that you have been seeing in the last training sessions. So this is a site from Jeju. This is a natural world heritage property, but this is also a biosphere reserve and UNESCO Global Geopark and Ramsar site. And this is also FAO globally important agricultural heritage systems. And also they have elements inscribed under, it's an intangible cultural heritage, inscribed under the 2003 Convention on the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage. So in a sense, Jeju is it's really a champion of all these multi-designated, multi-internationally designated areas, or we call it MIDAS. And Kathy will further talk about this, and we are very pleased to welcome Professor Su from the Republic of Korea, representing the C2C Center, Global Research and Training Center for Internationally Designated Areas today. So that's, yes, Anatole has already explained this. With other phase for the third cycle of periodic reporting. And in the operational guidelines of the convention, it's basically recognize the benefit of closer coordination with other conventions and programs. And okay, and the list of, list of selected global conventions and programs relating to the protection of both cultural and natural heritage is given in the paragraph 44 of the operational guidelines. And in the World Heritage Center, we also have a dedicated site for synergies, and the link is given here. So when we talk about multi-environmental and multilateral environmental agreements, or MEAs, in the context of World Heritage, we mostly focus on these 8 conventions, which are members of the liaison group of biodiversity-related conventions, call it BLG. So these 8 members, including World Heritage Convention, Convention on Biological Diversity, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species in Wild Flora and Fauna, Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animals, CMS, Convention on Wetlands of International Importance, Ramsar Convention, International Plant Protection Convention, International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. And finally, recently, there's a new convention joining. So it's the International Convention for the Regulation of Whaling. So you see these 8 conventions. And we specifically look at these 8 conventions in the questionnaire. So BLG was established, just to give you some background, it was established in 2004 to enhance cooperation among the biodiversity-related conventions. And the decision was after the decision was adopted by the Convention on Biological Diversity. And World Heritage Convention is a founding member since 2004, together with CBD, Ramsar, CITES, and CMS, and the membership is growing ever since. And each convention has a different mandate. For instance, some conventions like World Heritage Conventions, Ramsar Conventions, it focuses on area-based conservation. But some conventions like CITES, CMS, they focus on species, and FAO conventions, they focus on genetic resources. So we all have a different mandate, but somehow we all contribute towards shared goals of conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. So BLG meets regularly to explore opportunities for synergistic activities and increased coordination, and also we often regularly exchange information. So the photo here is from the 13th meeting of BLG, which was held at the UNESCO headquarters in September 2018. This is the first time actually that representatives of BLG also met with the representative of culture conventions. So it was, in a sense, a historic moment. And also after, for example, this April, all the executive heads of the convention met virtually to discuss the challenges. So they share challenges of all this, how to cope with COVID situation, and also to find a way forward. So there are a lot of communication at the secretariat level. And yes, and also, so the 8 conventions are making collective efforts towards the development. For example, we have different kind of cooperation, and notably, we are working together for development of a new and overarching global biodiversity framework. So it's not just at the secretariat level, but there is also an ongoing consultation among the secretariats and also bureau members of each convention to discuss this particular issue. And there is also different joint program, bilateral joint programs with different conventions, which Cassie will further explain later. And yes, and also there's we also talk about synergies in reporting, and I believe that some of you managed to join the webinar organized by UNEP. It was exactly the topic of exploring synergies in reporting among different MEAs. So Anatole already mentioned on this, but so there's every year the committee has adopt decisions which are related to either the biodiversity liaison group and also concerning cooperation with respective conventions. So here I listed some recent ones for your reference. So now I would like to look at the overview of the questionnaire itself. So there are questions related to synergies with other conventions both in section 1 and section 2. So this is just a snapshot. And for concerning nature, these are the ones mostly relevant to natural part. And the questions include each of the BOG conventions, but also at the site level. On the questions of synergies at the site level, it specifically focuses on Ramsar and manned biosphere programs, UNESCO geoparks, and also intangible cultural heritage. So as for multilateral environmental agreements, just we want to note that, so as you see the 7 conventions listed in question 211, but now we have 8 conventions which are members of the BOG, because International Whaling Commissions only joined recently, so it's not reflected in the list. So if your state party is a contracting government to the International Convention for the Regulation of Whaling, please also make sure that you write down in the box under question 215, so that we know that you also state part contracting governments to this convention. So now I'd like to talk about the synergies at the site level. So this basically includes multi-internationally designated areas, MIDAS, and we focus on these 3, Ramsar, Biosphere Reserve, and UNESCO geoparks. So concerning synergies with Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, we have close bilateral cooperation with Ramsar conventions, because we are both looking at the site-based conservation. And there is an MOU between the 2 conventions since 1999. And as of October 2018, 135 Ramsar sites are overlapping with 96 World Heritage sites. And this is something interesting, because we often think that Ramsar site is maybe related to natural world heritage, but actually about 1/3 of the sites have been inscribed on the World Heritage List is for their cultural values. So it's also relevant to the cultural sites. And we also work with different projects, including joint reports and joint mission, etc. And here in this World Heritage Review, number 89, we have a list of double designation of Ramsar and World Heritage. So this is something you may want to look at, just to see which sites are overlapping with Ramsar. But please note that this is not a complete list, so there are also new inscription since, and there might be some sites missing. So please also look carefully whether your site is also a Ramsar site. And just to look at a specific example, and so this is migratory bird sanctuaries along the coast of Yellow Sea. It's a newly inscribed natural site from China. This is the one inscribed on 2018. And this is also a Ramsar site. But here you can see that their names are different. So we use different names under each convention. So sometimes it's difficult to see that if it's double designation. So when you, so in the question 2.1.2, we ask you to list all the Ramsar sites under your responsibility. And here it said in full or in part. So in many cases, so the coverage of area is different from convention to convention, but they are only partially overlapped. So if it's fully or partially overlapped, please write down in the box. So ideally, both names. So which of the World Heritage properties are overlapping which Ramsar sites, so that we can further analyze from this point. And here, so it's important to note that often different names are used under different conventions. And as this is also complicated, it's really important that to ensure cross communication between national focal points and site managers, and also with a focal point for Ramsar Convention to fill out this question. So now turning to synergies among UNESCO designated sites. So here you see a map of all the UNESCO designated sites, which include World Heritage properties and biosphere reserves and UNESCO Global Geoparks. And now it's over 10 million square kilometers protected through this UNESCO designated sites. And this is roughly the same size of China. So here you can see how much overlaps or synergies we have in terms of sites. Here I want to give another example. This is a transboundary site. It's a West Tian Shan. It's located in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. So these components overlaps with two biosphere reserves in Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. So here you also see different names. So it's when you fill out the questionnaire, also please make sure that if there are more than one sites, one other designation which are overlapping with the World Heritage property, please ensure that it's written down accordingly. And again, this is not just full overlap, but if it's partially overlap, it's need to be noted. And actually, so this biosphere reserves, the site looks different somehow, but it's all this list of biosphere reserves are available from this link. And this is some reference for UNESCO designated sites. So there are separate website for the Man the Biosphere program and UNESCO Global Geoparks. Both websites provide a full list of their designated their designation. And also the World Heritage Review number 17 from 2013. They provide a list of World Heritage Biosphere Reserve double designation is available. But again, please note that this is not the most updated list. And so please double check whether any newly inscribed World Heritage property are overlapping with any of the other designations. Yes, so now I want to give some examples. So there is a section, the questions to list other designations, apart from the ones including Ramsar, UNESCO designated sites. But here I want to draw your attention that we have other important double designations, including FAO Global Important Agricultural Heritage Systems. So UNESCO and FAO are also closely working together. And we also hosted a joint workshop between UNESCO, which include World Heritage, Intangible Heritage, and MAP program, and FAO GIAS program to explore areas of cooperation in the field of agricultural heritage. And as of today, 8 World Heritage properties are overlapping with 9 GIAS sites. And actually 4 of World Heritage properties are located in upper region, and 3 cultural sites, including cultural landscapes, and 1 natural site. So it is also very relevant and important synergies between nature and culture. And I'm pleased to also have Crystal from ICOMOS today to elaborate further on these important synergies between nature and culture. And this is another important synergies with culture. So many natural World Heritage properties have elements of intangible cultural heritage. So here you see the example of Western Ghats from India. And there is one element of intangible cultural heritage inscribed under the 2003 convention. And you can find more details by clicking the link and to find out more what's intangible, the further details on intangible cultural heritage. And the link is available here. Okay, so before closing my part, I want to highlight a few things. So yes, so we saw that to respond this questionnaire, it is also important to have synergies between national focal points and site managers, and also with focal points of other conventions and programs. Yes, so it is, we understand that some of the national focal points, you are covering also other conventions, but we know that in many cases, national focal points are spread across different divisions in the same ministry or even other ministries. So this exercise itself is, we believe that enhancing synergies by connecting different focal points who are working on the shared goals. And actually, so this other conventions, so in developing this questionnaire, other conventions such as CBD was also consulted to develop this questionnaire. And as far as we know, this is the only mechanism or only very systematic way to allow us to look into synergies across the conventions and programs. So this is really a valuable source of information, but not just for World Heritage Convention, but for other conventions as well. And so as we see some examples, many designated areas, they often have different names. So it's maybe not so straightforward, and it might require some in-depth research to identify multi-designation. And finally, yes, as much as individual questions, so we think that a whole picture of synergies that obtained from this questionnaire and also improved communication among different conventions and programs at the national level are also a valuable assets of this PL exercise. So yes, so with that, I thank you very much for listening, and I want to hand over to Kathy. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon and good evening to everyone in the Asia Pacific region. It's very nice to be with you today. Let me just share my screen with you as well. One moment. Oh. Okay, it doesn't seem to be working.
We can see the presentation. It's not in full screen yet.
Okay, you can see it. Great. Okay, you can see this now?
We can see the full screen, yes.
Excellent. Oh, it's moved. Okay, one moment. Good old technology. Okay. You can see this now, yes?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So good morning and good afternoon and good evening to everyone. So as my colleagues Anatol and Kane said, so my name is Kathy Zischka. I work with the IUCN World Heritage Program in Switzerland. And so you've had a very good introduction to the questionnaire and to the cultural aspects of the questionnaire and the natural aspects from Akane as well. So what I'd like to do now is just add a few natural heritage case studies to give you an example of some of the synergies that we've seen, especially recently, specifically through policy connections at the international level, and then also some site-specific work and a document that IUCN has worked on in looking at best practice management across the MIDAs that we were talking about. So let me bring you back to the biodiversity related conventions circle that we have here, which Akane introduced. And if we look at the different conventions, as we discussed, you as site managers or focal points may be responsible for one particular convention or multiple conventions. And so looking at synergies where these work across the conventions is really important, and a growing importance of what we would like to focus on in terms of World Heritage and with other conventions. So what I'm going to do is have a look first at World Heritage and Ramsar. So as Akane introduced, we have 135 sites currently that are Ramsar listed, which overlap with 96 World Heritage sites. So it's an area where there is a very clear overlap. We have a lot of what we call dual designation. So these sites have two designations. So two different areas. So one I'd like to just bring to you from another part of the world as an example is Doñana National Park in Spain. So this is both a World Heritage site and a Ramsar site. And the reason I wanted to introduce it to you is because is as an example of a recent collaboration, how we work together very closely on the conservation of this particular area. So for example, in 2020, we had a joint mission. So as you will know, UNESCO and IUCN carry out reactive monitoring missions to assess the state of conservation of particular World Heritage sites, looking at the conservation, the threats, the potential issues going on in a site. And so really, we had not just a joint mission between UNESCO and IUCN, but we also work very closely with the Ramsar Secretariat because this is a dual designation. And so we have experts participating from all three organizations. The second example has already come up various times because it is such a key site. Now we do have some sites that have 1 or 2 or 3 designations, and as we said, Jeju Volcanic Island and lava tubes in the Republic of Korea is one that really does have all these multiple different designations, and it's a great example to look at for how to effectively manage across these different areas as well. So the second connection I'd like to just talk about briefly as a good example is between the World Heritage Convention and CITES. So as Akane said, this is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species in Wild Flora and Fauna. And so if we look at, so World Heritage sites are often critical habitats for vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered species. So for example, World Heritage sites listed under criterion 10, we have these really important habitats that might be the last place on Earth for a particular species. And so World Heritage can play a really important role in managing these endangered species. And so World Heritage sites might be threatened by illegal killing, illegal harvesting, and the associated trafficking. And so CITES, because it is the convention that regulates international trade, it is a clear, there's a very, very clear connection and a really good opportunity for synergies between the two conventions. And if you then look at how many states parties there are to the two conventions, you can see that there's a clear overlap, because we have, out of the 193 states parties to the World Heritage Convention, only 12 of those are not CITES parties. And so there is a clear overlap. And you see this with other MEAs as well, with CBD and CMS, and we spoke about site-specific ones, for example, Ramsar, as Akane mentioned as well. And so just as an example, to bring to you some recent examples, so this at the CITES COP last year, COP 18 was in 2019 in Geneva. For example, the connection between World Heritage and CITES, there was high-level collaboration at that convention level between the two, with a proposal for a new MOU between the World Heritage Convention and the CITES secretariats. And as Akane mentioned, we have these agreements between other conventions, between World Heritage and other conventions already, and this was part of the discussion last year. We also have species and site-specific discussions going on. So, for example, from this particular region, we have Siamese rosewood has been in discussion for several years, and also from another region, as an example, which I will expand on a little bit more for you, is the vaquita porpoise in the Gulf of California in Mexico. And so this is where we really see synergies happening at the international level, and where you can really look at different opportunities for collaboration. So as a specific example, I'd just like to present this. This is the vaquita and the islands and protected areas of the Upper Gulf of California in Mexico. And so the Gulf of California, this is a World Heritage Site. It's a unique habitat because it provides the habitat for this critically endangered species. So this beautiful little photo is of a vaquita. So it's the world's smallest cetacean. It's a small porpoise. And it's threatened by extinction because it's only found in this one place. And it's threatened because there's an international trade in totoaba swim bladders. So a totoaba is another is a larger fish, and this fishery, this supply pardon me, this demand for the for swim bladders has led vaquita being caught in the nets and being caught as bycatch, and thereby reducing the population from down to estimated 10 to 30 individuals. And so that's just to give you an overview of the situation and that particular site. And so what we've seen in this case is we've seen conservation actions being taken across multiple multilateral environmental agreements. So, for example, for World Heritage, the vaquita is an important part of the OUV of the property, so listed under Criterion 10. And in 2019, the site was included on the list of World Heritage in danger in order to strengthen and take conservation action for the vaquita. In CITES, as you saw on the slide before, at the 2019 COP, the CITES Secretary General undertook a high-level mission to Mexico. You can see an extract of that at the bottom of the screen. And there were various discussions around strengthening trade for the totoaba for the conservation of this particular species of the vaquita, and various engagement with at the state party level, the State Party of Mexico, at the NGO level, and in the global discussions. And then the third the third area I would like to raise as well is also the International Whaling Commission. As Akane said, this is the newest member of the new biodiversity, the liaison group of biodiversity conventions. And we can see there's also concern being raised over this because it is a cetacean, also being raised in the IWC. So this is where you can see clear conservation happening across different MEAs, and a real opportunity to strengthen these connections for conservation. And so this, you can see it's not just bilateral, it's not just between two conventions. You can often see overlaps of multiple different conventions. So that was just to give a few more examples. Now, one of the key roles of IUCN, as you know, is to support states parties with best practice guidance, to look at the global conservation and management of particular protected areas, and in this case, of course, around World Heritage. And so it's been recognized for several years now that the synergies, strengthening synergies between the conventions and particularly around protection and management effectiveness is really important. And so at the 2012 IUCN World Conservation Congress, which was in Jeju in the Republic of Korea, there was a resolution adopted which called for the establishment of an integrated management system for UNESCO protected areas, and then specifically to develop an integrated conservation management manual, which provides guidance for the systematic conservation and harmonized management of these sites. And then we saw, so I'll go into the specifics, I'll tell you a little bit about the report that came out and the guidelines, but that was then also approved. So that was adopted, and then follow at the next World Conservation Congress in Hawaii in 2016. The next resolution was around implementation and adoption, and really engaging with states parties, with UNESCO, and with all the different secretariats to really harmonize and integrate management for multiple environmental agreements. And so what came out of this process is a specific guidance materials around harmonizing the management of MIDAs. So Akane mentioned this before, MIDAs are specifically the sites, so multi-internationally designated areas. And this particular study was developed by IUCN with the Category 2 Center in Jeju and multiple different partners. You can see the logos across the bottom, and we'll hear a little bit more about the center itself from my colleague after this presentation. And so this document is some best practice guidelines around harmonizing the management of these MIDAs with a specific focus on Ramsar sites, World Heritage, Biosphere, and global geoparks. And so just to give you very briefly, just an overview of what the report found was that for a frequency for the double designated sites, for ones that have two different designations, you can see circled in the orange, World Heritage is actually the second and the third most common. And so these statistics have changed. Akane also provided an update, for example, for World Heritage and Biosphere reserves, and then Ramsar and World Heritage sites. These numbers will have changed. So this is part of the periodic reporting process. We'll provide the opportunity to update this information and to see how this is growing and how further synergies have developed over time. So not just two, but if we then see areas that have triple designated sites, in this particular study, we also saw that the most common overlap of 3 sites was between Ramsar, World Heritage, and Biosphere reserves. And you may see this in some of the sites across the Asia-Pacific region. And this, as I said, this opportunity will help to update that information. And so this is just an example I've pulled out of the report for areas from the APA region. So you can see here Vietnam is both a so in Vietnam we have Phong Nha Bang National Park, which is both a Ramsar site and a World Heritage site. Then we see a triple designation as an example in the Philippines. We have Puerto Princesa Subterranean River National Park, which is Ramsar, World Heritage, and Biosphere. And then, of course, we come back to the iconic photo that we've seen a few times in this presentation around in the Republic of Korea, around the Jeju Island site, which has, in this case, we have the four designations and then also the cultural designations on top of that. actually, I might just quickly go back. And as you can see, Akane mentioned in the questionnaire, to bring you back to the questionnaire, you can see in this table that the names and the designations of the different areas can be quite different. For example, for Jeju down the bottom, you can see 1100 altitude wetland is very different to Jeju volcanic island and lava tubes. And so that's where maybe a little bit more research and will help to be aware of this as well when completing the questionnaire. And this is just a visual to show you the different designations on Jeju Island and how these overlap. So I won't go into detail on these, but just to show you that with these multiple designations, it's really important to look at how we can harmonize the management across these. And so I'd just bring you back to the report. I won't go through the details, but these best practice guidelines really give you an opportunity to look at various parts of managing MIDAs. So for example, this is on point 3 is on the benefits of multiple designations. Then we have the challenges of multiple designations. So challenges of management, of working across different institutions. As we said, there might be different focal points, working on different conventions. And then specific recommendations at different levels. So we have recommendations for site managers at the local level, which can be anything from looking at staff capacity or managing tourism and visitors, engaging with local communities. And then bringing that to another level, so specific recommendations for authorities and focal points at the national level, looking at different points such as international, which is the most appropriate international designation for your particular site, how to monitor the effectiveness of what's happening in the site, legal frameworks, and points like that. And then finally, around recommendations for designating bodies. So this is what I mentioned just in the previous point. How do we improve coordination and information exchange across the different bodies, across the different management authorities, updating lists. And so this opportunity, just go to the last slide. And so this is this PR process that we're in at the moment is really a great opportunity to look at the sites that you have, to update the information through this process in the UNESCO database, but also to consider what are the opportunities for these sites that you might be managing and you might be responsible for in your region, and looking at going beyond just the designation, but what is the most appropriate one? What is the best way to manage this? How do you effectively work with different stakeholders? So I will leave you there. Thank you very much, and we're always available for any support and any questions that you might have. So thank you very much. I'll hand back to Anatole.
Thank you very, very much, Kathy. This was extremely helpful, I think, for all of us to see in detail and through examples how all of the elements work together and how protection as a whole functions not just in one convention, then another, but really across all of them. Now I'm very pleased to introduce Professor So Young-bae of Seoul National University. Professor So has been actively cooperating with Jeju Province as an expert since the preparation of the inscription of Jeju Island on the World Heritage List, and has been involved in the proposal and the establishment of the Global Research and Training Center for Internationally Designated Areas, which is a Category 2 center under the auspices of UNESCO that was established by the General Conference at its meeting last year in 2019. And he is also currently a vice chair to the IPBES and an advisor to IUCN. And we're very glad to have him for a few minutes today to present the scope of the Category 2 Center, which is, of course, especially relevant to what we're discussing today, but also to the work that all of you as national focal points and that all of the site managers are doing every day with regard to the protection of our heritage. So I'm very glad to pass the floor to Professor So. Thank you very much.
Oops. Let me just. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. I'm Young Bae-soo from Korea. Actually, I am a counselor to IUCN, not advisor. So last year, as you know, in the General Conference of UNESCO, a proposal was accepted to establish Category 2 Center, which is Global Research and Training Center for Internationally Designated Area in Jeju, Korea. I will make a brief presentation. Why we need this proposed center, how it has been pursued, and how it is going to be operated in future. With the rapid increase of internationally designated areas, including MIDAS, capacity building to manage IDAs and MIDAS better is needed worldwide. So to meet with this need, the establishment of Global Research and Training Center for internationally designated areas was proposed. There are many IDAs, internationally designated areas around the world, and 10% of them, which is 474 MIDAS, are present these days. And then since these internationally designated areas are operated in slightly different principles, the Global Research and Training Center for Internationally Designated Areas will bridge together ideas with different management capacity. Why is it in Jeju? As mentioned in previous presentation by Catherine, Jeju is the unique place which has 4 IDAs in the same area. So it has a biosphere reserve, World Natural Heritage Site, UNESCO Global Geopark, and the Ramsar site. As I mentioned, these internationally designated areas are operated and managed by slightly different principles and different programs. So we need to integrate a management system for protections and management of internationally designated areas. Jeju has another advantage, which is a geographical advantage, and Jeju has provide easy access, and it provides visa-free entry program to many countries around the world. Korea has also some advantages to operate this newly proposed center. Because Korean government has been also actively involved in international training programs on the management of national parks, and also government has been closely collaborating with Ramsar for capacity building in the East Asia region. As Michelle mentioned, the 2012 World Conservation Congress is a starting point for Jeju to try to host this newly proposed center. Actually, a motion was proposed by Jeju, and then the motion of establishment of an integrated management system for UNESCO protected areas was adopted as a resolution. Since then, for 4 years until next World Conservation Congress in 2016, IUCN has developed MIDA management guidelines with close collaboration with Jeju. And then again, 2016 World Conservation Congress, another resolution was adopted, which is related on harmonizing the integrated management of MIDAS. And then that resolution was a kind of a turning point for Jeju to implement their efforts to establish the proposed center. As you see here, the collaboration between IUCN and Jeju was crucial to have this center established. How this center will be operated? Okay, the main objective of this proposed center is to provide research and training for management of internationally designated areas, including MIDAS. And then this will actually ensure environmental conservation in line with sustainable development objects, which the whole globe is pursuing these days. Functions. Actually, several functions are listed for this center. So I'll just speak up major functions suggested. Actually, the major function is to disseminate knowledge on management of internationally designated areas, and then it will carry out research to develop case studies and examples of local development integrated into conservation and the management of internationally designated areas. And then it will it will be linked to develop guidelines of, developing guidelines on best practice. It also, this center also will provide capacity building programs for managers and representatives, especially from developing countries in Africa and Asia Pacific region. Another function, important function, is to provide a platform for networking and cooperation. And also it will develop partnerships among appropriate UN agencies and programs and other internationally international intergovernmental organization, NGOs. It will be located in Jeju World Natural Heritage Center because it is proposed to use existing infrastructure. So Jeju World Natural Heritage Center is, provides good facility for this new proposed center because it is well equipped with many office spaces, classrooms, meeting rooms, and it can provide all facilities for functioning platform for international discussions on designated areas. The center actually will be run by 3 columns, which are the governing board and the secretariat, and then executive committee. And also the domestic related organizations, institutions will join as a strategic partner at the beginning. The governing body will be will be organized by inviting representatives from various sectors. In order to guarantee transparency and meet with the global standards, the government of Korea, hosting country, will send some representatives, and the representatives from local government, Korean National Commission for UNESCO, and some representatives from international organizations, and then some experts from other countries, and then also some representatives from UNESCO member states will be invited, and also the Director General of UNESCO will send a representative to monitor closely the operation of this Prophecy Center. So, what do we expect from this Prophecy Center? So, as the first category to center, which will address issues on internationally designated areas, the proposed center will improve the capacity of internationally designated area managers and the site management system. It will also contribute to upgrading internationally designated areas to be the pivot in achieving SDG. And also it will provide active support in the development and implementation of initiatives and strategies designed to improve internationally designated area management. It will also generate a synergy effect with the existing UNESCO Category 2 centers and other UN institutions. Thank you very much. This is all I have. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you very much indeed. I would like to pass the floor to Crystal Buckley and Valentino Oetova, who will, I believe, have a couple of inputs on questions related to the linkages between culture and nature and the UNESCO Culture Conventions, as well as some other lessons learned from other regions. So Crystal, Valentino, the floor is yours.
Well, hello everyone. Good evening from Australia, and good morning and good afternoon to all of you. It's my pleasure to be listening in on this session. Anatole, because we're quite beyond time tonight, I'm thinking that I probably don't need to say very much, although I might just paste into the chat some links for some other aspects that haven't yet been mentioned, particularly the Memory of the World program, which I think you briefly touched on in the first presentation, but also a kind of made a brief mention of the connecting practice work that's been done between IUCN and ICOMOS, which has recently directly addressed the synergies between the Food and Agricultural Organizations program for GIAS and World Heritage Cultural Landscapes and Natural World Heritage Properties. So I might just cut right to the end of my remarks and just paste a few links in the chat for the participants to follow up if they feel that those aspects of the questionnaire are relevant to their interests and their issues. So I think that the presentations tonight have done a wonderful job of illustrating the breadth of the issues that we're asking the questionnaires to collect, that there are many, many issues, and in a way thinking outside the box a little bit, that the other designations and applications of recommendations, conventions, and programs that we're asking you for may be a little different than the reasons for which your properties were identified as meeting the threshold of outstanding universal value in World Heritage. But the overlaps and synergies are extremely important, and they will be issues that your site managers face on a day-to-day basis. So please help us to really understand more fully how all these things fit together in your country, and particularly for the individual World Heritage properties where these apply. So I might close at that point and just thank you for the chance to listen in to a really interesting session of the periodic reporting for Asia and Pacific, and of course to remind that as well as the World Heritage Centre staff, that ICROM, IUCN and ICMOS are here to support you as you work through the process. So with that, I'll close. Thank you very much, Anatole, and to all the colleagues.
Thank you very much, Crystal. And we'll also be sure whatever you put in the chat to add it as well to the presentations, so that everyone can have access to the links. Today's session, it's one of these sessions where I was slightly afraid that we didn't have a lot to fill our hour, because it's one of these subjects where either you go very quickly or you have to go a little bit more in depth. And I am actually quite glad that we went in depth and that we went beyond just telling you, these are the questions, this is how you answer them. But of course, I apologize if we've gone for some of you late into the night. Valentino, do you have any important lessons learned that we haven't touched upon yet?
Thank you, Valentin. Thank you, Anatole, and good morning, good evening, everyone. I won't be quick. I will be very, very short. I think most of them have been covered by Akane and Kathy in the presentation. One of the main lessons learned in the previous region was concerning, let me show, maybe I will share a bit my screen so I can show you on the questionnaire itself here. So most of the questionnaire was quite well answered, but as Akane has mentioned, that sometimes designations in all the conventions programs might be different. So I have to be careful. There's a lot of research work. I mean, sometimes you might need to look deeper into some research, because it is clear that we're talking in whole or in part. It means that a component of the site might be under a different designation, might be also under a different designation. So just be careful. And when you mention it, just click on update and then you put your comment here by mentioning the worded site and the name of the other designation as it is described on the designation. Please also know that in the guidance section, what has been said by Akane and Kathy in the presentation, you can also click here and you have the links, the relevant information directly in the guidance part of the questionnaire. This is it for my part, and thank you very much, Anatole.
Thank you very much, Valentino. And thank you to Crystal for sharing the links as well. I would like to open the floor for any questions that you may have. We'll try and be brief so that you can all be released. But if there are any questions that arise from the presentations, please ask them either in the chat or by raising your hand on the platform. I see no questions at the moment. Very good. Then let me close today's meeting. And thank you very much to all of you for attending, and to our colleagues from the advisory bodies, to Professor So, for sharing their knowledge and all of this information about Synergies today. We will continue in the coming weeks to provide you with some topic-specific sessions. The next session on the 3rd of December will be dedicated to the identification and the reporting of factors affecting World Heritage properties, which is the core part of reporting on section 2 of the questionnaire. So thank you very much to everyone for your attendance and for your attention. If there are any questions that arise, don't hesitate to write to us, as always, at wh-periodicreporting@unesco.org. And write any of us directly at the World Heritage Center, and we'll be sure to circulate the question as well to any experts who may be best placed to answer them. So thank you again. Have a lovely day, and we will see you again on the 3rd of December. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.